You think being erased from your family comes with shouting or slammed doors? No. Sometimes it's a slideshow where your face is blurred out. I didn't fight. I didn't yell. I just walked into my father's 75th birthday, at the house I paid to save, sat by the cake and waited while they pretended I never existed. I've lived the kind of silence that makes you question if you were ever part of the family at all. If you've ever felt invisible in your own story, this will show you how dignity doesn't need a spotlight, just presence, clarity, and one quiet act of truth. My voice didn't need a microphone. I played one video of my dad saying he was proud, and the whole room forgot how to lie. If you don't watch this now, you might keep waiting for a seat at a table that was never built for you. Before we dive into the story, if you're enjoying these meaningful stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more. Now let's start the story together. The message came on a Tuesday morning, tucked between a grocery store coupon I don't remember signing up for and a reminder about my 10:00 a.m. strategy sync. It read, "You're not invited this year. It's just easier for Dad." No greeting, no punctuation, no explanation. Just Hannah, always the messenger, soft-spoken and careful, sending something she likely didn't write herself. I sat still for a moment, my hand resting on a roll of wrapping paper, the one with deep blue foil I had picked out just last week. It matched the tie I remembered Dad wearing in an old photo, from when I was maybe 7. The gift was already here, boxed, taped, a small card tucked neatly inside. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just wrapped the ribbon around once more, tighter this time, then placed the box gently on the far end of the table, like I was putting it out of reach. Last year, I made the mistake of raising a glass during the toast. Grandma had just passed a few months earlier. I said something kind, maybe too heartfelt, about how she held this family together when we didn't even know we were falling apart. The room went quiet. Rick looked at me like I'd tripped a wire. Later, Mom said I had shifted the energy, as if grief was impolite, as if remembering made things harder. So this year, they fixed it. No drama, no risk, no me. Outside my apartment, Boston wore its early autumn like a second skin. Rain tapped against the window panes in a steady rhythm. Cars below moved with urgency I couldn't summon. I took a sip of my cold brew, now more ice than coffee, and opened the group chat, the one labeled Dad's 75th Family Thread. My name wasn't there, not even a mention. Just photos of place settings, confirmations about catering, a note from Rick saying, "Don't forget the slideshow, keep it uplifting." I scrolled, hoping I'd missed something. A simple, "You coming?" or a tag. Nothing. The screen felt heavier than it should have. People think exclusion is loud, that it comes in fights and slamming doors. But sometimes, it's silence that does it. Not the absence of noise, but the ease with which you're left out, like moving a chair from the dining table. No fanfare, just gone. I had flown in the night before, quietly, no announcement. I told myself I just wanted to see the leaves change early this year, but deep down I knew better. I booked a room at a little boutique hotel downtown. It smelled like old paper and citrus, and no one there asked me why I was in town. I liked that. I wasn't planning anything, not then. I just needed to know. Would they even notice? The answer sat there, lit up on my screen, a 5-word message that had been agreed upon, typed, and sent. I was no longer part of the calculation. But here's the thing. Care doesn't vanish when it's rejected. It lingers. It waits. Sometimes it even flies across the country and checks in early just to be sure. I looked out the window, watching a man struggle with his umbrella at the curb. The wind tugged at him like it wanted to remind him who was really in charge. I leaned back in my chair, wrapped the hotel robe tighter around me, and whispered, more to myself than anyone else. I was already in Portland. What I needed now was to see it for myself. They didn't cut me off with shouting. They just stopped saying my name. It started small, like most things that matter. One holiday video call in 2020 that I wasn't included on, chalked up to technical mix-ups, then another for Mom's birthday in the spring. I found out about it when Hannah posted a group photo to her Instagram story, full of smiling squares and virtual confetti filters. My square wasn't there. At first, I assumed I missed a text, or that my phone had filtered a thread into the spam folder. It had happened before. But no, nothing. Just silence shaped like a celebration. After Dad's surgery in early 2021, I offered to fly in again for his follow-up. I cleared my work calendar, looked up flights, even checked the hospital's visitor restrictions. When I called to confirm, he said gently, "Rick's got it covered." No malice, just finality, like a torch passed without ceremony. Rick, who had once missed Dad's retirement dinner because of a golf trip. Rick, who forgot Grandma's birthday until she was too far gone to remember his. Still, he was there. He lived nearby, dressed the part, knew which wines Dad liked now. That counted more than old memories, apparently. Mom started saying things like, "Rick's really stepping up," and "It's so nice to have someone nearby." She never said I wasn't helpful, just didn't say I was. I became the unspoken asterisk at the end of their sentences, the distant variable. Back in my Boston apartment, I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Family. I hadn't touched it in months. Photos loaded slowly. Me and Dad on a porch swing, Hannah and me at the lake, even a candid of Rick grinning while I lit the grill. Then I saw it. The image had once been my favorite, taken at Dad's 70th birthday. Me standing next to him near the coat rack, both of us laughing mid-sentence. A moment caught honestly, but in the slideshow Rick emailed everyone last month. My side had been blurred out. Not cropped, not shadowed. Blurred, like someone had taken a soft eraser to my face, just enough to make the memory look off, then called it fixed. It hit me differently than I expected, not like a betrayal, more like the first snow, cold, quiet, slow to melt. I closed the folder, not because I couldn't bear to look, but because I suddenly understood something. They weren't forgetting me. They were getting good at leaving me out, on purpose. And oddly, I got it. People like stories that make sense, and I never quite fit in theirs. Not the version with Rick as the solid son, Hannah the warm caretaker, Mom the graceful matriarch, Dad the honored patriarch. I was the footnote with sharp questions, the picture with too much contrast. When it came time to plan Dad's 75th, I saw no invitation, no update. Just silence that had learned how to walk and smile. It wasn't just neglect. It was a cleaner story, without me in it. "Legacy," Rick said in his voicemail, his voice carefully modulated like he was selling something polished and expensive. "This year's not just a party, it's a legacy moment." I had replayed those words a dozen times, not because they mattered, but because they didn't include me. That word, legacy, gets tossed around like glitter these days. It sounds noble, final. But I knew what it was made of. I'd seen the baseboards and the peeling porch rail. I'd scraped them myself. Willow Lane hadn't changed much in 10 years. The neighborhood wore its history proudly. Low fences, mailboxes with handwritten numbers, driveways that creaked with memory. I parked 2 blocks away, out of habit more than strategy. Old neighbors still waved, familiar in their routines and unaware of the storm I carried under my coat. The leaves had turned brittle underfoot. Gold and rust and a few stubborn greens clung to the trees, like they hadn't heard the season had changed. I walked slowly up the front path. The porch had been repainted, lighter now, a cream with gray undertones. It looked good, but I knew the color underneath. I still had paint on an old sweatshirt back in Boston. A white truck idled across the street. Catering staff moved in and out of the house like it was theirs. Linen-wrapped tables sat folded by the fence. A banner leaned against the porch swing, celebrating a life of purpose. I stood still. My breath caught between what I saw and what I knew. This was my house, not in sentiment, on paper. I had paid the back taxes when no one else would. I had covered the insurance gap when the roof leaked. It was Grandma's once, but they had let it rot until I stepped in. Quietly, No demands, just action. And now they were using it. I dialed Mom. She picked up on the second ring, chipper in that way that says company's over even when it's just logistics. "Oh, sweetie," she said, "we're almost set. Everything's coming together beautifully." "For Dad's party?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Yes. Rick has been a lifesaver, and Hannah's handling the decorations. Mr. Alluston offered to help cover some of the wine. "From the Lions Club?" I asked. She paused. "Well, yes, he still brings a bottle to every gathering. You know how he is." I let the silence stretch, just long enough for discomfort to bloom. Then I asked, carefully, "Is the house being used for the event?" "Oh, it's the perfect space," she replied, too fast. "And technically, it's still under Dad's name. It just made sense. It's not flashy, just enough to show we're doing fine." Technically. I hung up soon after. No anger, just a kind of quiet that hummed behind the ribs. That night, I pulled up Rick's voicemail again. "Legacy moment," he said, like it meant something universal instead of something borrowed, something taken. Then I remembered something else. Years ago, Rick had asked for a copy of Grandma's deed, said Dad might need it to get something sorted with the mortgage. I hadn't asked questions. I should have. I found Mr. Alluston's number in an old email chain, Mom's holiday contact list, still signed "Best Regards, Margaret." I stared at it for a full minute before calling. His voice hadn't changed. Warm, slow, like an old quilt over cold feet. "Well, I'll be," he said. "Haven't heard your voice in years." I didn't correct him. "I thought you might show up last year," he continued, "but someone said you had a conflict." I let the silence be my answer. "No matter," he said kindly. "This year's going to be special. Big space, nice setting. Your dad's proud, you know." "Is there still a seat?" I asked. "Of course," he said, without hesitation. "We've got a head table, but I'll put you by the cake. Best view of the room. You can slip in quiet, like always." I thanked him and asked him not to mention it to Mom or Rick. He paused, then said simply, "Understood." I didn't plan to speak. I wasn't coming to change their minds or stir anything. I was just coming to be there, to exist, fully. In the one story they couldn't crop me out of. The linen was cream, the lights were soft, and the sign above the fireplace read, "Celebrating a Legacy." Gold script on heavy cardstock, mounted against a wall dressed in autumn foliage. I wasn't on the guest list, but I was there. The banquet hall in downtown Portland had that expensive kind of understatement, like it was trying to look like it hadn't tried too hard. String lights draped across exposed beams. A live quartet in the corner played soft jazz, the kind that filled space without being remembered. Waiters in black moved like shadows, refilling glasses before anyone noticed they were low. I slipped in through the side door just as Mr. Alluston had promised. No one looked twice. That was the strange blessing of being forgotten. You became part of the furniture. I walked the perimeter, then took the seat by the cake table. From there, I could see everything. Rick stood center stage, crisp suit, subtle tie, voice confident like a man who had spent just enough time at podiums to know how to pause for applause. He worked the room in slow, deliberate circles, clasping hands, dropping names. Every movement was calculated. Every laugh landed on cue. To his right, Mom, Margaret, adjusted centerpieces with military precision. She wore a pearl necklace I hadn't seen since Grandma's funeral. Hannah hovered nearby, her daughter clinging to her knee, both dressed in soft pinks that had clearly been coordinated. Dad sat in the middle of it all, regal in posture, quiet in expression, like a man accepting his place in a carefully curated painting. The slideshow started. Photos faded in and out on the large screen by the stage. Rick fishing with Dad, Hannah's wedding at Cannon Beach, old Christmases lit by warm bulbs and perfect smiles. I wasn't in a single one, not even in the corners, not even by accident. Mom walked by once to check the buffet layout. Our eyes met for the briefest moment. Hers darted away almost instantly, like she'd seen something awkward, like a misplaced utensil. I stayed seated, still. Hands folded in my lap. I didn't flinch. Not when someone laughed too loud at Rick's story about the year Dad taught him resilience. Not when the jazz trio played Dad's favorite Ella Fitzgerald number. And not when someone raised a glass and said, "To the family that always shows up." No one saw me, but I saw everything. Dinner came and went. Salmon with walnut glaze, butternut squash soup, arugula salad dressed with apple cider vinaigrette. Plates clinked. People nodded along. Legacy, they called it. But it wasn't legacy. It was theater. A play in 5 acts written by omission. Rick returned to the microphone with a smooth smile. "Tonight," he said, "we're not just celebrating a birthday. We're honoring a life rooted in values, service, consistency, family. Our father taught us how to stand up, how to show up." The screen shifted again. A family tree graphic appeared. Clean lines, elegant branches, names etched in gold. Rick, Hannah, their children, Mom, even Dad's brother. My name was nowhere, not even as a footnote. I stared at it, at them, at the polished narrative presented to a room full of people who would never ask questions. They didn't need to. They saw what they were shown, and what they were shown had no room for someone like me. This wasn't erasure by mistake. This was deliberate, designed, a narrative built with absence like a choice in architecture. They didn't just forget me. They built the entire show around pretending I was never there. Just as Rick lifted his glass for a final toast, a waiter stepped to the microphone and cleared his throat. The room paused, not dramatically, more like a hiccup in a well-rehearsed play. Rick's smile faltered just slightly, his glass still raised mid-air. Guests turned their heads slowly, the quiet settling over the tables like a soft wool blanket. "We have one more guest," the waiter said, glancing down at a card. "Someone who's traveled a long way to be here." That was my cue. I stood from the table by the cake. No spotlight, no music swell. Just the quiet sound of my chair sliding back and my heels tapping gently against polished wood. I walked with purpose, but without pace, across the hall. I didn't look at the guests. I didn't need to. Rick's eyes followed me. For once, he had no script, no polished line, just a tension in his jaw that pulsed beneath his skin. I stepped onto the small platform near the AV station and handed a flash drive to the technician. He nodded once, like we'd rehearsed it, which, in a way, we had. The main screen flickered, the lights dimmed a touch more, and the slideshow began. The first photo showed me and Dad standing on the old porch at Willow Lane years ago. He was holding the ladder. I had a paint roller in my hand. We were both laughing, caught in motion, wind tangled in our hair. The date in the bottom right corner read October 2008. Another image, a hospital room, dimly lit. I was in a plastic chair, legs tucked under me, holding a styrofoam coffee cup. Dad lay in the bed beside me, eyes closed, chest rising slow under the blankets. A nurse had taken the picture, said I looked like someone who hadn't moved in hours. Then a photo of Grandma in her chair, frail and small, my hand covering hers. Her smile faint, almost gone, but there. That was the week she stopped remembering names. Except mine. A video clip played next. Just audio. "Hey, kid!" Dad's voice crackled through the speakers, casual, a little rough. "Just wanted to say thanks again for the tax stuff. I don't say it enough, but I'm proud of you. Really proud." The room didn't move. Not a whisper. Not a cough. I didn't turn to look. I didn't need to. I could feel the silence behind me. The ripple of breath held too long. I stepped forward to the mic, placed one hand gently on the edge of the podium. No notes, no tremble. "Since the house helped fund this," I said, voice steady, "I figured I should be here." I let that hang. Rick stared at me. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Mom's face was frozen, not angry, not apologetic, just unreadable. Like she hadn't expected a real moment to find its way in. Dad didn't speak either, but his expression shifted. Not a wince, not a smile, just a tiny lean forward in his chair, like he'd remembered something he forgot he cared about. I looked out over the guests, many of whom didn't know me. Some were probably wondering if this was a joke. Others, I think, understood before the slideshow ended. You can tell when a room stops pretending. I didn't linger. I didn't make a speech. I didn't list receipts. I walked slowly back to my seat, past the cake table. My place card was still blank, but now everyone saw me sit. Legacy, I thought, isn't gold lettering or a curated photo reel. It isn't catered salmon or floral centerpieces. Legacy is what you do when nobody's clapping, when the hospital room is cold and quiet, when the porch needs paint and the taxes are overdue. Legacy shows up in those moments, and it remembers who did, too. I left through the same door I entered. No one followed. I didn't expect them to. The air outside had shifted. It was cooler now, touched with cedar and something faintly metallic. Maybe the rain that had fallen earlier, maybe memory. My coat hugged tight around me as I stepped into the parking lot, the distant sound of laughter still spilling from the hall behind me. It felt too bright, too full, like a stage that hadn't noticed an actor had exited. I walked slowly, keys in hand, but not ready to leave just yet. There was a tree near the edge of the lot. Its branches leaned slightly, uneven, like it had grown that way on purpose. Dad used to rake leaves under a tree just like this, back when such chores felt like bonding and not obligation. I used to help him bag the leaves, each of us racing the wind. I stopped there, letting the shadows settle around me. There was no applause, no whispers behind my back, no apologies. But there was a stillness, the kind that doesn't ask for anything. It just allows. A familiar voice broke through. "You gave the only speech worth hearing tonight." I turned. Mr. Alluston stood just behind me, his hands deep in the pockets of a weathered coat, the evening air curling at his collar. "I didn't speak," I said softly. He smiled. "Didn't have to." He reached into his coat and handed me the folded event program. The cover was embossed, Thomas Bennett, A Life of Purpose. Beneath the name, in small script, hosted with love by family and friends. "I think you paid for this," he said gently. I took it from him. The cardstock felt heavier than it looked. We stood there a moment, neither of us needing to fill the silence. Then he gave a brief nod and turned back toward the building. I didn't watch him go. Instead, I stared at the program in my hand, then tucked it into my purse. I didn't come tonight looking for a seat at their table. I didn't come to rewrite their version of things. I came for the one piece that wasn't up for debate, my own presence. Sometimes dignity doesn't arrive with fanfare. It walks out the side door, quiet and certain, leaving nothing behind but clarity. I got in my car and started the engine. No music, no explanations. Just the soft sound of tires rolling over wet pavement as I drove away from the building and into the Portland Hills. The same hills where I learned to drive years ago, white-knuckled with Dad beside me, patient in the passenger seat. He used to say, "Ease in, don't force the wheel, let the road tell you when it's time to turn." I think I finally understood what he meant. As I drove through the quiet Portland Hills, I wasn't angry anymore, just certain. I hadn't come to be seen. I came to remember who I truly was, even if they chose to forget. Sometimes being part of a family doesn't mean being included in every photo or toast. It means showing up when it matters, holding on to your truth, and learning that self-worth isn't granted, it's remembered. In the end, legacy isn't what they say about you. It's the quiet way you carry yourself when no one's watching. If this story reminded you of your own journey, I'd love to hear it. Feel free to share your thoughts below or join us for more heartfelt stories like this one.